Economists are concerned about the level of debt in some sub-Saharan African countries. Some have debt-to-GDP ratios higher than 100%. The International Monetary Fund provides assistance in the form of low-cost loans to help governments meet their obligations. But in return, they must agree on a program to stabilize their finances. Our Washington correspondent Daniel Ryntjes speaks to the Africa Director of the IMF, Abebe Selassie, for more details.
The most recent pronounced increase has been concentrated really in commodity exporting countries, which have been impacted, of course, because of the decline in commodity prices, the adverse effect that has had on their oil revenues, on their output. That has meant there's been a particularly big spike in the debt of commodity exporting countries. And then there's been a few other countries also where in recent years there's been a very strong push to invest in infrastructure in particular, but also try and address health and education outcome improvements. And so, there's been quite a bit of borrowing to address that. So debt has gone up.
Does it keep you awake at night?
Subject to going forward, policies being taken to stabilize this debt level, we think it's a manageable problem. Now, that said, there are 7 countries in sub-Saharan Africa where debt has become unsustainable. Some of these are commodity exporters, the likes of Chad, Republic of Congo, oil exporters, or other very fragile countries like the Gambia, where they will need, some kind of rescheduling to bring debt to a more sustainable level. In most of the other cases, we see a need to strike a better balance between continuing to address your development objectives and avoiding debt sustainability. And we think this can be done in many cases through higher revenue mobilization. So, subject to a bit more revenue mobilization,
finding ways of raising
generating
taxes.
More taxes. Yeah. Now, it's not an easy thing. We very much recognize that. But you cannot continue relying on debt to finance your development objectives. The schools you need to build, the clinics you need to build, the roads, ports that you need to invest in.
The IMF has often been accused of imposing austerity on countries and therefore limiting growth and then limiting opportunities to invest. How do you answer that? How do you begin to dialogue on how the IMF imposes or is perceived to impose a set of values from outside onto these countries?
We of course have a dialogue, and there are some policies that we feel are needed to help address a particular difficulty the country has. There often is quite a lot of discussion on whether our prescription is appropriate or the government's alternative policy measures are the right ones. I can assure you that in 90–95% of the time there is a compromise, there's an agreement that both parties feel they're comfortable with, and sometimes there's not an agreement that we feel the balance between spending and the debt outlook is not one that we can support, so we move away. But I have to say, in most cases, there's a robust dialogue, and we agree on a way forward that's consistent with what the country tries to achieve.